Hey there, Dr. Fred, Didomenico here with Elite Chiropractic Coaching, Chiropractic United Podcast. Here we are back again. We've been consistent. You guys like this? And I'm really excited tonight to have Dr. Dan Sullivan. We've done this before, Dan. Man, you're just a leader. You're all over the place. I mean, you got such a powerful message. Great chiropractor, obviously. Big principle. Came from old school philosophy. And man, you got research and things that are advanced in the profession. You're on every stage. So you're really making a big impact. So I'm really excited to have you here tonight.
It's an honor, Dr. Fred. It's always fun. And I love chiropractic. You know that, man, just like you do. And you cut us open, that's what comes out. And so anytime, even if one person is listening and this adds value to their life and their practice, I'm game.
That's right, because somebody told you, and now look what happened, right? So.
Yeah, I always take you back. I think I shared this on this podcast before a couple of years back. I went to Dave Majors. You know Dave Majors.
Yeah.
He's a chiropractic advocate, if you will. He's a guy that's kind of toured the country and helped chiropractors in screenings and talks and communication. And this was 2001. I was just in chiropractic school. I got into chiropractic because my back was hurting when I was pole vaulting in high school. It was a sports injury and nobody could get better. So my mom's a nurse. I've got two brothers that are medical doctors. My parents, I grew up in a medical model. I didn't know chiropractic. I wasn't adjusted out of the womb. None of that, right? Fully vaccinated, plenty of antibiotics, plenty of the whole thing, right? So I didn't come from this place where fortunately, I have a lot of friends, and you do too, that they came out of the womb. There's an advantage to that. And now we know there's also a disadvantage to that because they didn't have to fight sometimes for it. But nonetheless, here I am up at chiropractic college, and an upper trimester student said, you should go to this event. And so I went to it. It was at American Legion Hall in Richfield, Minnesota. And he was doing a lay lecture for a chiropractor. So I, as a student, went and listened with a bunch of, prospective patients. And I just heard this guy talking about things that made sense. There was kind of like a stitch of reality in it. It made sense. It made me think. But then I thought to myself, but man, that's a big leap. Like, I don't know if I can fully believe that right now. But there was something about it. I remember, so I got in my 1983 Honda Prelude, and I drove out of that parking lot. I got up to the first stoplight. I just had a cell phone for the first time. I had just gotten into a cell phone, not a new cell phone, the first cell phone I ever had. And I remember flipping that thing open. And I called my little sister, and I said, Abby, my sister's she's 5 years younger than me. I said, Abby, I think that the reason our dad had recently had a heart attack. I said, the reason why I think that part of the problem of Dad's heart attack came from his back, because I'm learning about this how the spine is related to so much, and the nervous system, particularly the heart. And she, like a good little sister, listened. And then at the time, my oldest brother was just graduating medical school. My other brother was in medical school. Again, my mom was a nurse that had been, for 20 plus years at that point. My other sister was in occupational therapy school. So my little sister listened to me, and within about 3 days, she had told the rest of the family that Dan thinks that Dad's heart attack had something to do with his back. Nice. So you can imagine how that went over. And, soon enough, I became that guy, right? So I was off the reservation. He's one of those. And I had to make a decision. And I talk about this, especially to students. I had to make a decision at that point. I mean, wasn't like a one day, but it was probably a year's worth of time. I remember going in, I had a sister-in-law that said, don't ever be this type of chiropractor, because she worked for one, and said, don't ever be this. Don't be the guy that doesn't vaccinate. Don't be the guy that doesn't take their kids to the doctor. Don't be the guy that doesn't do drugs, right? And I thought to myself, no way would I ever be that person. I'm just in this for back pain because that's what helped me. I'm just going to go help some people with back pain like I got help. But I couldn't ignore the truth that I heard that night. And then at some point I had to make a decision. So some of you potentially listen to this, you're a doc that's 20 years in or 10 years in or 5 years in, and you're still looking for that acceptance from the people that you love, and I'm not doubting that you love them and they love you, but you got to get off the idea that you're going to be accepted by them, or that's going to be the thing that, their acceptance is what is going to take you to the next step. And I'm telling you, I had to make a decision early on. I was 21 years old. And I was something about it that I just said, there's so much truth to this. So regardless of how my family feels at this point, I have to go down this rabbit hole. And I did. And did I get in deep? And
first.
Yeah. And then the rest is kind of history. So yeah, so I come from that. And so started with Dave Majors, opened my eyes to healing doesn't come from, a pill, potion, lotion, surgery. It is inside, simple things that you raise everybody. Have you ever baked a cake before? And I'm like, where's it going with this one? Hey, raise your hand if you baked a cake. Everybody says, yeah. And he said, how did you bake the cake? And he gets to the point where he said, none of you bake the cake, right? The only thing that bakes the cake is the oven, is actually the heat. And his whole point was, you've never healed yourself. A doctor's never healed you. Anybody that's told you they've healed, a drug hasn't healed you. You've healed yourself. And so we have to change our perspective of what really does the healing. And again, something as so simple as that started to change my entire, so nonetheless, here I am. And yeah, so now to kind of carry on the story, how did I get here? Man, just connect the dots. And believe me, I've done enough life work, and you're an expert at this, Dr. Fred. Like I've dove into this enough to say, wow, I've probably carried this burden of having to prove it to siblings that what I do is right and validated and irrefutable. And so I went out, grew a big practice, was in some of the same circles that you were in. I mean, I remember being at seminars with you, watching you adjust people, lines would back, hundreds of people and stuff, chiropractors getting adjusted by you because they needed, you were teaching technique and so forth. And so, yeah, grew a big practice, 1,000 a week, single doctor office, wellness care, all cash. But it ended up getting me down, and it was something more for me to say, gosh, I'm seeing what's going on in schools. I know what I learned in my school, and yet I see these miracles happen, and yet there's people that have the gumption to say that subluxation doesn't exist. And so I'm like, you know what? Let's now go into the science, rabbit hole and see what that says. So one, I can have more certainty myself, but now two, and I wasn't expecting at this point, but now I can actually communicate and help other chiropractors get certainty that, you don't have to just walk into a room and say, hey, believe it because I said so, that there's evidence behind what we do, and you put meat on the bones.
Well, and what's so fascinating? I mean, while you're going through this story, I got 8 million things going through my mind, and it's such a compelling story. First of all, let's back up a little bit. But, I remember going to DE, and, this is the old story. Every chiropractor's heard, Robert Graham, when he wanted to build a church, and he couldn't build a following. And then somebody said, when you accept the Bible in full truth, that's when you'll build a following. And I remember hearing that right out of school, because I went to DE 3 months out of school. And I heard it once and said, you know what, that's right. The principle is a freaking universal law, life force to a physical body. It's not a principle is a truth. No, it's a universal law. It is a law of life, right? And so the mistake is if we ever doubt it. And that's what we'll probably get into, is that's a belief. Right? Do people believe it or not? So, and we did the same thing, man. It's like never question the freaking principle and always adjust, which brings up a story. Let me get into this real quick. I remember being a student. I was studying Gonstead, and we went to this guy. He's like the top Gonstead guy in LA. I went to LACC, and we got about 6 students around, and he shows, hey, this 20-some-odd-year-old kid comes into my office, and what would you do? And you could see a pedicle fracture. And we're like, holy shit, man. What do you do? And then so we're sitting there scared to answer, and somebody spit out, refer. This guy goes, no! And he yelled at us. He freaking did a P to A adjustment, and did a post X-ray, closed the pedicle fracture. And we're like, holy shit, man. But what that taught me was always adjust. You know what I mean? And never doubt the principle. And the reason I go through that is you come from those same roots where you never freaking question the principle. But what you did was know the truth of your sole purpose, even to go against your own family. Not the love, but at least the belief systems.
Yeah.
Big huevos, man.
You said this often, and in fact, it's so good talking to you, Dr. Fred, because it reminds me, we all forget it. I mean, I forget it. If I went to every interaction that I have, and recognize whoever I'm talking to, no matter who it is, that they deep down, and I don't know how you say this, you say it better than I would, but basically believing and understanding that they actually know this universal truth. And they do. Now, their head may intellectually talk them out of it, but if I can go into every interaction, it changes the interaction, right? And I've taken that to heart. When I heard that at the boot camp last year, I was like, you know what? That is powerful, because it changes trying to convince and just trying to reach into their heart and not get through their head. And I know we're getting a little bit practical, but I just, you're again, a master at that. The one thing though, you're talking about Gonstead, that's how it got me in. So I was at Northwestern. There wasn't no philosophy there. I mean, there was no, but I luckily had some upper trimester students that were big Gonsteaders, hardcore Gonsteaders. And they got me involved with the club. And so we would go to Mount Horeb. I would be in Mount Horeb at least every quarter, right? 3 to 4 to 5 times a year in Mount Horeb. But also every Thursday night, I would go to a guy named Dr. Thatcher. Dr. Thatcher was a guy that actually, there was a lot of controversy, the Cox brothers, the Troxel guys, like there was that, and Thatcher was apparently a Troxel guy, but Thatcher apparently was one of Gonstead's right-hand men too, but he wasn't talked about. Anyway, every Thursday we'd go out there. And here's the thing, and this is what reminded me, because we talked that a couple of weeks ago. You're right. It is a belief. As much as we don't want to acknowledge sometimes that it's a belief, right? I believe it. But my belief is based on what I've seen. And so when I think about that, I literally saw these docs. Like you saw this guy. Like he had no question in his mind. He was not going to refer him to what? To who? Yeah. Right? He's thinking that bone needs to be moved. Right? That needs to have, less interference and more biomechanically correct. And that's all he knew. Like his certainty wins. And I watched these guys over and over again, whether it be Mount Horeb, whether it be local Gonstead docs, just the level of poise and certainty. I'm like, you can't deny this. And so here's what I mean by that. There are certain detractors. I mean, you've dealt with them in our profession. There's people that are, and here's the thing. From a science guy, somewhat of a, quote unquote science guy. I mean, I like the science for a reason that it backs up the philosophy. But I'm here to tell you, and that's probably one of the first times I've ever said it, and it stemmed from one of our conversations. If you want to find some evidence, research PubMed evidence to back up whatever thing you think is true, you can find it. Yeah. You can find it. There's a host of research evidence-based guys in our profession that think that Deed Harrison's work is all a bunch of garbage. The Heidi Havock's work is garbage. And they would say, and basically any study you throw at them will say garbage because they only believe their thing. Yet they'll come out with their study and they'll say, this is the Holy Grail. And they'll pick apart your study. And I'm here to say, hey, that's their belief system. That's me trying to convince them is as crazy as, a Jewish man trying to convince Peter that he didn't witness Jesus after the resurrection, right? Like he saw it. He saw it. And so we saw it. When you don't see it in your office, when you don't see literally, people rise from the ashes of sickness and suffering and disease, I understand why you would have a hard time believing chiropractic is more than bad backs, right? And so this is where I guess I get more excited today about getting around the right people. They're going to feed in your mindset. Get around the right people. They're going to give you the right tools and certainty and information. So you go back to your office and witness it yourself. That's where your belief is going to continue to come, is witnessing it yourself. And we'll leave these guys that will never witness it and say we're just good for evidence-based low back pain and 6 to 8 visits. That's their belief system. That's what they're going to believe. By all means, be the emergency room chiropractor. But don't tell me over here that I'm not seeing what I'm seeing. Right? So anyway, my little rant for the day.
Well, no, that's totally awesome. And again, I got 8 million things going through my mind, so I'll keep this short. 2 things, like say, there's guys that back pain, and we run into this a lot of times at CBP because studies are folks around back pain. But now, actually, and I would say this because Deed has told me this, since the lead has had an influence, he's bringing more and more studies towards organ problems. And I've run into this with CBP guys, is that, well, we can't prove organ problems or blah, blah, blah. But in any chiropractor, which there's tons of medical proof about organ problems, by the way, any chiropractor, if you're focused on back pain, that's all the patient knows. And then here's the problem. Their heartburn goes away, but you never talked about it. So they think, what, I just, it must be because I stopped eating bread, or I don't know, it's like, well, I started taking a vitamin C tablet. No, it's like all this bullshit. But when you talk about it and then you track it over time, and especially if you do spinal correction, their health changes. Like I would say pretty darn close to 100% of the time. Like it's rare because in Elite we track these at re-exam, subjective organ health problems. And it's rare when something doesn't get better. Like it never happens. If that doesn't get better, man, something else is screwed up. And then the next thing is your philosophy with stroke. Were you always a science guy or not really? I mean, you like science, but you're a philosophy guy that brought you into science.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I was the same way. I was a philosophy guy that brought me into technique. I was a philosophy guy that brought me into communication.
Yep. And there's a difference. And that's, again, and we talked about this, that there's a difference. I mean, if you're, because we dealt with it. If you could be this technique guy and then you're just all heady and you don't have the philosophy to back it up. Now you're just all heady and it's all about lines and drawings on an x-ray. And I'm not opposed to those, but I'm opposed to that's the only thing, right? What you're looking at is a real human being there. And from a vitalistic above, down, inside out, that with that being the core of who we are. So again, that's where, again, philosophy drives everything. And to speak of the science, again, your worldview is going to direct even how you look at science. So yeah, I mean, that's where and even the organic thing, I mean, people that don't, it's like one of the things I like to talk about is that I like this actually right now, what's more important to me than research is science. If you just look at the autonomic system's relationship with spinal integrity, like game over. Hey, I don't need every single study that shows why diabetes is relation, why heartburn, why, acid reflux and digestive and autoimmune and immune system and organ. Like if you look at, it's kind of like when somebody starts working out, it's not weird that not only do they lose weight, but man, they're sleeping better at night. Their immune system, they find out they're not getting bronchitis anymore. Their insulin levels down. They got more energy. Like all these things. It's not weird. And we don't need every single piece of science to back up why that happens. The body is physiologically getting better and there's less taxing on the entire body. So it's the same thing with chiropractic. When you deal with the autonomic nervous system directly, which you do by dealing with the spine, it's not rocket science why you're going to improve all these things. So where I take it a step further is say, okay, regardless of the organ problems or the musculoskeletal problems, if we know that if somebody with those sees results, at some point that subluxation was there but had no expression of symptoms yet. And so why can't we loud and proud be able to, most importantly, just be able to boldly and ethically tell a mom, a dad, look at people in the eye and say, this is why we want everybody to get checked, because these things like cavities or high blood pressure can occur without any symptoms. I just did a study. I was doing a newsletter this week, literally this today. And look at the study. This is a study for 2015. And it showed that 91%, so they looked 100 healthy, and they said 100 healthy newborns from 6 to 72 hours old. So less than 3 days old. 100 healthy newborns.
They're based on, right?
What's that?
They're probably based on like APGAR and all that other crap. I mean, that's literally newly born.
Yeah, but listen to this. So here's what they said. Healthy, which in their eyes is, again, decent APGAR score and no like outward symptoms of expression of symptoms, no diagnosis. That was their healthy, right? But here's the kicker. So they were measuring somatic dysfunction. And what they found and so they were measuring cranial, cervical, thoracic, or lumbar and pelvic somatic dysfunction. What they found is that 91% of these infants had somatic dysfunction in the cervical spine. 94% of them had which is spinal dysfunction in the lumbar spine, and 80% of them had somatic dysfunction in the pelvis. In the absence of symptoms, termed healthy. And so this is the stuff that when we start to look at the evidence, and this is actually not in a chiropractic study, the medical study, when you start to look at this, and somebody would say, well, they're not measuring chiropractic, they're not subluxation, they're not having anything to do with chiropractic. Yeah, it has nothing to do with quote unquote chiropractic in it, and it has everything to do with chiropractic. Because if you look at 120 years of why we've seen the results we do, and you start to stack on some of this science and research even outside of our profession, and we have enough intelligence to connect the dots, what that's saying is there's kids that are subluxated that the parents have no idea, and they have no symptoms, but yet eventually that subluxation or that spinal dysfunction, what they call somatic dysfunction, will eventually turn into a bigger problem, eventually turn into symptoms, and again, it's going to be pills, potions, lotions, drugs, or surgery. So here we come and say, hey, before there was any symptom, how about getting them checked? Just like I do my kids, right? Just like we see here. So you can't get, and again, somebody's going to come in and is going to tell me, the progressors, what they call the progressives of this profession, some of the detractors, there's 13 things wrong with that study. This is why it's bad. Hey, that's your belief system. Here's what I know. And this is what I've been talking about lately. What do you attribute 122 years of evidence that is seemingly unrelated to the spine conditions, symptoms, experiences every week, literally every day, in chiropractors all over the world, getting better. And don't chalk it up to placebo. What about the kids that have no placebo, can't believe in it because they don't even understand English? What about the dogs that get better? I mean, so this stuff, the reason why I say the hardest questions that I ask are the ones I ask myself. I don't say things unless I've challenged my own self. And so, unfortunately, most chiropractors don't do that. And I want to propose to them the tough questions so they can answer them, so they can have more belief, conviction, and deliver the goods.
There you go. Thank you very much. Well, there's again, I got all these things running through my mind. So I have all these questions. Number one, well, since you've already touched on it, this was a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, and this is really this is one of the themes we take in Elite, because it's been 123 years, right? 2018. So we got 14% of the population. Gallup did a study, 2015, 14% of the population went to chiropractors in that year. So we haven't even hit the tipping point, 123 years. Like dentists did it in 40 years, and people don't even friggin' like their dentists. Patients love chiropractors, right? So 70% of those think that it's about back pain. So 70% of 14% think it's about back pain. And when they polled the American public, 54, and they were given 5 healthcare choices for back and neck pain, 54% took medicine first. So over half of the American population still thinks it's about doctors. And this is where one of the themes in Elite, and the reason we have our Creating Believers Bootcamp, is it's a belief system. Everybody on this podcast knows that, just back pain alone, not to mention overall health, but why doesn't the public believe it? And that's really the thing is, and this is the big question, do your patients, and you said a really powerful thing, Dan, because you said the most powerful questions are the questions you ask yourself. You challenge yourself, and based on those answers, going to determine what you do, which is probably why you weren't really a science guy, or maybe you were a dormant science guy, but science, the principle took you to science.
Yeah.
So here's my question for everybody. Do your patients use chiropractic? What's that mean? Well, they could say, I love chiropractic, but when they have the flu, do they call in sick? Do they if their kid has a flu, do they bring in the pediatrician? Do they drive with a fever to friggin' Rite Aid or CVS to get drugs instead of going to the chiropractor? Is every patient lifetime care? So there's lots of questions. Or do they believe in chiropractic? Because if all behavior is belief, and this has already been researched, and people live what they believe, if they believe chiropractic, you're going to live it. And that's what we do, right? That's what people on this podcast do. You guys live chiropractic because you believe chiropractic. Whether or not it's truth, you said in the beginning, there could be all the science in the world, but somebody will find a study that it doesn't work because that's what they believe. Excuse me. So I'd like to pose that question to you guys. And heck, if you want to create believers, man, there's nothing more powerful than our patient management boot camps. So there's a shameless plug. But what it's really about is asking yourself that question, and then like what you do, then if you think too many use it, then find a way to create believers and discipline yourself because it's your life purpose.
Yeah, to follow up on that, I was pretty blown away at that, and I got a chance to speak at your boot camp, and I just sat in the back. And the reason I'm looking at my phone because it's one of the notes, the pages of notes. I probably took a few pages of notes in my phone, and it's one of the ones that I visit the most. Elite Training is what it says, Elite Training. And you basically went through and explained everything that I've thought about, but you articulated in a way that, wow, that's why that makes sense. And here's why it was powerful for me and for anybody there. It's like it helps you not only understand it, but then it helps you understand them, and then it helps you walk through the processes to help somebody come and bridge the gap, which we all want: better care, or better conversion into care, acceptance care, better retention. And so often, a lot of times, again, we just spit on. I was guilty of it, and you've actually dialed this down before. That's why I love you, Fred, because you can actually say, well, here's why you're successful, because here's why you could grow your practice, because you just, no matter what you were going to do, it all just comes out of you. And I think 2018, we're at this place where we can have kind of our cake and eat it too. We can actually say, hey, there's communication time. I mean, you got ninja ways to walk somebody through a process, and that's what they learn at bootcamp. I couldn't stress that enough if you're not out there. And and you really got to revisit it over and over and over again, because this stuff, just, it takes time. I'm assuming. I mean, I hear and hang out with some of the docs that were there still and consistently talking to me, like, yeah, I got to redo this, revisit, because then you slide a little bit, and then, and so, but here was the thing. You mentioned something that hit me was, hey, it's interesting because if this is all about back pain, man, I would have been out of this profession a long time ago. Truthfully,
I would have shot myself.
I mean, I've learned this about myself, that I get so excited about things that people don't know that if they did know, literally could change their life and then could change the fabric of society. Like when we talk about, again, hanging out, I wasn't in the DE room, but I was in pretty much every other philosophy room there was. And I would hear guys, like, Reggie Gold and Fred Barge and Sigafus, and hear them talk about, back in the day, I mean, what would have happened if Adolf Hitler was adjusted and his atlas was toggled? Like, would he have done the certain things? And there's just this conviction that you're like, do I have that conviction? And is that like, do I believe that? And then you start to see it in practice and you're like, man, I can't unsee that. I can't unexperience that. And then you start to say, for me, it was, okay, there's the philosophy. Now I need to walk into any room and be confident that I can communicate this with anybody on their own terms. Meaning, hey, if I'm talking with a researcher, can I speak to them in their own scientific terms? I'm not going to go in there and talk about mottos of the body heals itself and philosophy. Now, I'm not going to start there. I may get there because then I can point out the limitations of science and research, but I need to start with, there's an undeniable link between the autonomic nervous system, the central nervous system, and the spine that is undeniable in any level of science that you look at, any research, any center, any hospital or med center. So if we start there, then it just, again, begins to explain why 122 years worth of evidence and testimonies have happened. And so what does that do for us? For you on the line there, what does that do for you? Again, I challenge you. What is your belief? Why do you believe it? And do you have the evidence to support what you believe? Right?
And so let's get back into a bit of your journey, man. So you asked yourself that question, and I'm just going to assume, based on what you said, is your desire was, I want to go into any room and to be able to have such a strong foundation to talk to anybody their language. So at what point did you hit that and decide, I really need to go into the science, I need to be out of practice? I mean, talk about those moments that were driving you that allowed you or inspired you to change your whole life and career path, in a sense. Not that it's a career purpose path.
Yeah, there was no kind of, here I was in practice. It was in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I remember going into, it wasn't like a specific event, but I remember it was a series of events. Some thinkers and some patients that were really intellectual and somewhat analytical. And they started asking some good questions. And honestly, my whole explanation before this was again before I dove really deep into the science, was, hey, I was explaining hard bones on soft nerves. We unpinch nerves. And that's, the kind of was the fullness of the story. Hey, your spine looks like this. There's no way that brain and life could heal. And although there's partial truth to that, for instance, I remember working with a little baby, and the idea, I was trying to tell their dad that, there's pinched nerves up here. And I was explaining it as if a spinal nerve root is pinched. He's like, gosh, and I could tell he had a hard time with this, but I'm like, and I remember it kind of rocked me a little bit to say, hey, and I remember going through some of my Chestnut stuff, James Chestnut, and some of the science and even some of the CBP work. Because, man, my first CBP seminar, that was a Gonstetter. And the first thing he said is like, okay, let me show you this full spine, and let me just show you with a little bit of translation what that looks like for the pelvis. So now you're pushing on a PI ilium, but all you had to do is translate it back, and that rocked me. Again, I'm pretty bullheaded when it comes to like my beliefs, but when somebody shows me something and I'm open enough to know, wow, okay, so I'm going to have to reevaluate here. And I remember driving home I was in Kansas City, and I was from Minnesota to Kansas City, and because I was a student at the time, I remember that 6-hour drive back was just a rocker for me. I was like, wow, this is going to change everything. And so I take you, okay, so that was that. But so here I was in my office, and I couldn't explain it the best I wanted to this dad about why their child was having issues. And And it wasn't that, I see a ton of kids at that point. It's just that this guy had hit me in a certain way. He wasn't trying to debate me. He wasn't trying to say it wasn't effective. He just wanted an explanation. And so I started to say, you know what, there is more to the story there. And I need to get a better grasp of that. And then I dove in. And then in 1 year, I went to 3 Dan Murphy seminars in 1 year. And I started to realize, you know what, as a profession, nobody's talking about, at least the circles that I'm in, nobody's talking about the true science that backs up why every human being needs to be checked. I was kind of sick of I'm not walking in a room, and even for this matter, to chiropractors, like gone are the days that we could just try to convince people of what it is. But yet we know all these results happen, and we know the organic results happen. It's not just musculoskeletal. So this is where I literally was sitting in a Dan Murphy seminar. I'm like, oh, I see. There's so much upper cervical neurology. The reason why BJ Palmer got all the results that he did was because of the neurology, the dense population of neurology that's in the upper cervical spine. It's not that there's pinching on a nerve, or even that that the spinal cord or the cord itself has a bunch of pressure. Yes, that does happen and can happen, but the majority of time, we're literally influencing so much neurology throughout the spine, but particularly the upper cervical spine, because of how densely populated all these tiny little, again, muscle spindles, Raffinis and Pacinians, and I'm not here to go in neurology talk, but that opened my mind because I said, we're explaining this wrong. And I shouldn't say wrong, we're not explaining the whole picture. And for a lot of chiropractors, because they don't have a certainty around the big picture, they don't have a certainty of the depth of neurology that they're influencing, they go to the lowest common denominator and they just go pain because that's what the insurance company pays for. And so I said, I'm not okay with that. And so then I just started putting out some content. My honest story is I actually moved to Nashville, Tennessee, partnered with a guy because I started run the student program of an organization in chiropractic. I was coaching with this company. And then, so I was there, but then I got out of that company in 2014. I moved to Atlanta to team up with Guy Reekman to open up offices as a part of it. It wasn't a part of Life, but it was a part of his initiative, one of the big initiatives he had. We did that. I worked on that with him for 8 months, and then the board pulled the plug. Here I sit. And I was sitting in Atlanta. I'm like, gosh, and I just started to throw some stuff out online. I was about ready to go back to full-time practice, and then I started to get some speaking events, and then I said, you know what, I'm going to practice part-time, and then doors started opening. So it wasn't anything that I'm like, here's was my destiny. It was like I started doing this. This is my passion. Here's what I will tell you, though, Fred. And some people ask me like, well, they say, so I want to be a speaker of chiropractic. I'm like, first off, you're already probably in trouble because if you're asking that, you're probably never going to be. Because here was the thing. I was willing, I'm still to this day willing to die on this hill. And that hill that I'm willing to die on is the fact that we've got a world of people out there that don't know what chiropractic is. They have no even frame of reference, is just bad backs and neck pain. And we have a bunch of chiropractors, arguably the majority, 60, 70% of them, that aren't communicating anything outside of the musculoskeletal model because that's all they believe, the science that backs it up, when that's not true. And so and then we've got another group of chiros that I believe would be getting 10 times better results if they understood some of the science and could start communicating the science on 2018 science and not 1942 science. So I'm like, I want to reach them to help them better communicate it so they can lay their head down at night. They can reach more people. They can walk into any room and be confident, be comfortable, be able to, again, not worry about what they think because it's true, what the patient thinks because it's true. And then I got a bunch of people over here that's just treating insurance because that's all they think they can do because they don't fully understand it. So they don't have enough conviction to be able to say, you know what, your family needs to come. You know what, you need care outside of the back pain model. You need care more than 6 8. I don't care if your insurance company covers. This is a difference between your health and your future, not because it's my opinion, but because this is the reality between your spine and nervous system. So long-winded story to say, hey, I doors have opened. I didn't, I say, hey, God opened these doors, and I just continue to, still to this day. I mean, I'm going to go. I got a speaking event this weekend. I'm doing, I think, six state associations, conventions, state conventions this year. And, I turn down more than I get. And I think I also know that, I'm not naive I'm young. I feel like, I probably bring some energy that will help them grow maybe their attendance. And so energy. Yeah. So to me, I like, you know what, that's the mission I have, is to really bridge the gap. In the midst of that though, man, if I could just tell you in the last week, the haters and the bullets and the arrows from inside our own profession directly to me, whether it be you. Yeah, just in the last week. So I've had a doozy of a day. But, you know, it's like, and that's why, you know, you don't know this, but, you know, our conversation we had 3 weeks ago on belief, when you said, like, it does come down to their belief. I mean, we can acknowledge that there's a truth, right? There's a universal truth, but you gotta believe in that truth. So I'm very at peace, more than I ever have, when I kind of go toe to toe with some people. I'm like, hey, it's your belief. I'm not going to try to convince you of your belief right now. Any study I would ever throw at you, and I'm talking about the detractors, they're going to have a problem with. So why would I, you know, if you don't like Dean Harrison's work, I got nothing for you. Like, there's nothing I'm going to convince you of. So, but here's the thing, and I'll shut up here in a minute, but this weekend, so I'm listening to a sermon this weekend, and it hit me. I mean, this was yesterday. I was on a treadmill listening to a sermon of Andy Stanley, a pastor I really love, and he was able to articulate. He said this. He goes, "We don't believe that in this Christianity thing because the Bible said so. We believe it because of this one event." And that hit me, because he's like, you know what? It's so true. There was an event that happened that this guy said he was going to die and then rise, and one of his best friends believed him, then didn't believe him, then denied him, and then re-believed him after seeing him rise from the dead. And so it hit me of like, there's nothing that you or I could say to somebody who wants to believe that chiropractic is just for bad backs, if that's all they want to believe. But here's the thing: there's a large portion of chiropractors right now, and I'm going to talk to you because the elite group is on this podcast. You have friends that are on the fence that want what you have, but they don't know where to go. And that's why you've got to get them to a boot camp. You've got to get them in rooms. Islands will kill them. Islands destroy any of us, right? Islands destroy us. So it just hit me again. I'm like, you know what? I'm very convicted right now. I'm very clear in who I'm going after, who I'm there for. I'm not trying to convince somebody that's, you know, so on the other side and going to just hate and whatever. Amen to them. Let them do their thing. Here's what I am for. And man, when you see what you and I have seen in practice, these guys haven't seen it. Like you said, they chalk it up to, you know, well, I've started drinking more water since I've been going to that chiropractor. That's why my digestion, my sleep, and probably why my cancer tumor went away. You know, that's what they think. Yeah. And man, if we just pay attention to this. And so, but to your point, back to the main thing, somebody's not, you know, a doc on the line here. If you're like, he's like, you know, they don't come in when they're sick. Why does other doctors, I hear them all the time. I get patients calling in and there's like, you know, I'm sick. I don't want to get anybody else sick. When you got other offices, they're like, that's the first thing they do. I'm sick. I need to be in now. I need my kids in now. I will say this, and I don't know how I know you explain this. One of the things I talk about with docs and teach them on is say, hey, what you win them with is what you win them to. If you simply just won them with, I'm only going to overcome your back pain. Now, I'm all for talking about their life effect. I'm all for talking about how it's going to influence their life. But in the midst of that, and I mean, I'm not saying everybody's got different processes. It may take you 2 visits or 3 visits or 4 visits. It may take you 1. I don't know. But if you're the one that's like, you know what, I'm gonna get them in on this, and then 6 months from now or 3 months from now, that's when I'm going to talk about the other benefits: the immune system, the brain, the neurology. See, to me, I'm an intuitive guy. If you're doing this, say I'm an accountant and you're my chiropractor, and you know 3 months, 4 months down the road, you're like, oh, by the way, digestion and immunity and. I'm calling BS. I'm like, if it was that good, why wouldn't you have said that from the beginning? If that's true, you would have told me in at least my first couple of weeks of being here. And so you got to watch. And again, I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but a lot of chiropractors, unfortunately, that's what they do. Is like, let me just win them with the lowest thing. The low hanging fruit was at their back. And now you're wondering 6 months later why everybody's left. In fact, here's the other thing, and we've heard this from many stages, and it's true. If all you won them with is their symptom, they're leaving. They're leaving either if the symptom goes away, they're gone, thanks, doc. When the next symptom comes, I'm back. Or they're leaving because it didn't go away. And so at some point, and again, you're the guru on this to be able to walk them through a process and get them to believe that.
Yeah, nice. Well, you're saying all this, and again, all these things are going through my mind because we talked about it. So there's 2 things I want to say to that. First of all, I'm not going to get into detail, but I am giving a webinar coming up here on the reason, part of the reason the profession is so hung up on back pain is we've done what we've been taught. And there's so many management groups that say, well, everybody knows they buy with emotion, justify it with fact. And that's why they say, well, Ms. Jones, how's your back pain affecting your life? Well, I can't pick up my kids. I don't feel like a good mom. The problem is now you just associated a highly emotional condition with back pain that wires into their limbic brain. So when they say, well, give them what they need and then sell them what they want and then teach them what they want, you know what I mean? Or I'm sorry, the other way around. Give them what they want and then teach them what they need. The minute you wire them like that from day one, you already created a neurological path. So I'm going to be giving a webinar. If you guys want to know how the mind works, how to get them hooked, and why these things happen and they get hooked on back pain and how to get them off it, then send me your email, Dr. Fred, DRFRED1, Dr. Fred1 at MSN.com. I'll put you on the list when we get this webinar out. I'm also going to be doing a 8-webinar series coming up to show how to change beliefs. So just send me your email. So that was for everybody that wants an answer on we're gonna answer that. More importantly, on this whole thing, I lost my train of thought. But you know what?
While you're thinking about that, and by the way, make sure I get that details of that so I can get that out to on my channels as well for that webinar. Because here's the thing, Dr. Fred, and we talked about this at the beginning. We've talked about this many times. I'm all for, being able to, again, sell and close and all that. I think it's all vital. Because I've also been on the other end of the spectrum. There was a time in practice where I was like, man, I get up in front of anybody. I could inspire them and I could try to, kind of rant, rave and do my thing. Because I can't talk about this without just getting fired up. Because I know, but sometimes I can lose there was times when I would go to doctor report and I'd walk out of there. That was the best doctor report I've ever done in my own head. And I go, 3 for 7. That night, or 2 for 5. It's because sometimes I can lose connection and not bridge both gaps. Like, I'm going to show you the big idea. I'm going to teach it to you. I'm going to inspire you. I'm going to give you this hope. But then I've also got to connect the dots here in the back. And that's what, again, someone like you who is rare that can see both sides. Like, listen, we got to have that sales and understanding sales cycles, understanding the technique, like you said, like you just walked through, like understanding that side. But here's the thing that's, again, I see it very often that it feels missed. If you don't have a heartbeat of chiropractic philosophy, like if that's not what comes out of you, then I feel like you missed this big thing because there's a lot going on right now that's like, education is dead and doctor's reports are dead. And that's what they're saying. I'm like, so what you're saying is all we're going to, just a better golf game. That's kind of, as long as we can teach them emotionally to get them attached to their better thing. That doesn't lead us as a profession down the right path. So again, I've got a very emotional attachment to that. And someone like you has a skill set, because I don't know all the sales kind of that you've been through, all that training, all that communication, so needed. But with such an undertone and foundation of philosophy, that's, I believe, the future of chiropractic, where it needs to be, right?
Well, yeah, and the whole thing, again, I'll just say this one last thing, and I know you use the word sales, and that's what it is. It's not the other thing on how do you feel about your pain is sales. What we do is how to build relationships. And the thing is, when you see that your primary goal is to identify their belief system and then to be able to change that belief system and give them a belief system about chiropractic. Now, the only way you can do, this is what I'm going to say before, the only way you can do that is if the chiropractor doesn't have limiting beliefs. And so this, you talk to chiropractors, what are the beliefs that limit chiropractors? It's my area. I mean, how many times, like people call up, they go, doc, I know it's not my area, but it's my area. Right? How often you hear them people on the phone, I don't think it's my area. Well, I hear all the time. Well, people in my area can't afford it. And then there's people in white collar areas. These people with all this money, they just don't want to spend it. Like we hear when people call me, I can hear their belief systems and it's all good. But what you're getting at is those are the barriers to having the principle in your heart. People want to use their insurance. Well, I could show you a bunch of people in Elite that their patients don't care about insurance. It's my area. Well, I could show you a bunch of people that learn how to change belief systems where they do things in all kinds of different demographics. People can't afford it, or They live too far. How about that one? They live too far. Well, I'll show you CBP docs where they fly from other countries and pay them $3,000 for a week and a half. And they fly from other countries. So whatever that belief system is, it's okay. But that's the fog and the filter between the principle and your ability to communicate and understanding how to change another person's belief systems, because your belief systems are in the way. So that's one of the first things we do at the boot camp. Let's get rid of our belief systems so we can see clearly how to get rid of other people's. And then, man, people just go through the roof. But that's when you're talking about, you got to have the principle in the heart. That's the filter in between is our own belief systems.
Yep.
Hey, go ahead.
Another big one as you're speaking there, reminded me of another big one. I just talked to a guy out of Dallas just a couple of days ago, and he was kind of in the same boat. One of the programs that I had put out, he went through, and he's like, "Gosh, this has given me, I can't tell you how many times, this has given me, like, I used to be like that. I was fired up, and then I lost it. What happened? It just got, he wasn't around the right people, got in a rut, started to just do insurance, and then then that sucks. I mean, then it's like you're in a practice that you never thought you would be in." And he's like, "This has fired me up." And he goes, "But this is teaching me something that's actually getting me excited again from an intellectual stat, and then that's actually working through my heart." And here's what he said, and this is, again, if you had a buck every time you heard this one, the patients in my office, they just don't like to be talked at. They don't like to be educated. They just want I've heard that so many times. And I'm like, I've had people say, no, and then they start doing it. I mean, I can remember this. They won't bring their spouse, right? I mean, how many people would say they won't bring their spouse? To me, it's like, again, it's all belief. I could have somebody at the end of it who didn't want to bring their spouse. They brought their spouse. They may have been arms crossed, but at the end of it, that spouse is literally asking if I will come speak to their entire, company or business. And it's not because I got any magic in my words. It's because if I can just get them to sit in front of me. You cannot deny that health is a major aspect of your life. Undeniable. You need your health. So what you haven't been told is your health is directly dependent, a part of it, on the health of your spine. That's undeniable. So if I can walk you through, just give me 30 minutes of your time. And then again, either you're going to walk out more pissed off, or you're going to walk out and you're never going to be, you're going to be a lifetime patient. Again, that's just my thing, right? If you give me, somebody taught me, I was pretty much unwilling, I would say. I didn't really want to hear it necessarily. Like, I didn't come into school thinking I just want to hear this. In fact, it was the opposite. I just want to be my back pain doc. But I can't deny the truth. And there literally, again, this goes to what you say a lot more eloquently. We all have that inside of us. That's a universal law that when the right buttons are pushed, if you will, and I allow somebody to be open to it, they'll never turn away from it. Unless, again, intellectually, like you said, and you explained it better, they sometimes will convince themselves in their head. And again, to your point, being able to unlock that through a series of, again, procedures, questions, and which is the brilliance of the boot camp.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because as you sit there and you almost put yourself in that position of teaching a workshop and you get all fired up, and then there's people out there that they don't feel that confidence in public speaking, and I can sit here and we can get all fired up, and I'm older than you are. It's 30 years in chiropractic, man. But let me tell you something. I remember teaching my first workshop. I was like 2 months out of school. And I remember taking a speaking class in college. And we had to give a 5-minute speech. And I'm like, that is ridiculous. 5 minutes is I can't even say my name in 10 minutes right now. If I have less than an hour, how the hell am I going to speak less than an hour? But the bottom line is my first workshop, I gave it to 3 people. I had diarrhea all day long. So when you're sitting there looking at Dan and you're all fired up, man, you didn't start there.
Oh, you want to hear a crazy quick story? In college, I went to college. I played baseball at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I was there. Sports was a big thing, but I also was pre-chiropractic. And so I had already determined, hey, that's what I want to do. And I literally, in order to I was supposed to take a speech class. I had to take one as a junior in high school. Was literally the worst class I've ever. It was the same thing. I was like, anytime I would get called on in class, I would be shaking. And so I took 2 English classes in undergrad so that I could avoid taking a speech class. because I literally was so afraid of I remember, and then in chiropractic school, I had an upper tri student. I was in the weight room lifting, and the guy was like, these two things, start studying the philosophy of chiropractic. Again, a random dude, Chad Nickel, practices in Sioux Falls, South Dakota now. He's like, start studying the philosophy of chiropractic and join Toastmasters. That's what he said. I didn't even know what Toastmasters was. I went and looked it up. And then I'm like, I ain't speaking to nobody. And it wasn't until that was trimester 2, I believe. And then at trimester 7, I joined a Toastmasters group. My first big speech, I was literally like this. I was so crazy. Again, it goes back to, but then that conviction is so much like, I can't avoid this truth that is so deep down inside me. And I'm even convinced, and I don't know what you think of that. Some people it just boils up inside me. Like, who am I to let my little, lack of wanting to get in front of people or fear get in the way of other people experiencing this, because I now know a truth and I'm responsible for that one. You know what I mean? Like so I had to quickly overcome that. And then again, then it's a series of coaching. I got great coaching early on to say, listen, there's a sequence. If you can just walk somebody through a sequence, nobody's sitting in front of you. I remember so many people come in, here's the sales pitch. Because I did group reports. Here's the timeshare. Literally I was like, my husband was going to call me, he thinks it's a timeshare. I remember getting coaching on that. I was early out of practice. And I started off, as my coach told me at the time, he said, start it off, because that guy said that. This is going to be the biggest timeshare of your life, except this ain't going to be at the end buying a boat or a place to live. You're going to get the opportunity to hear how you're going to live with your spouse healthy for the next 60, 70, 80 years. Right? And I remember starting off with that. I was so scared to do it. I did it. I don't think they signed up, but at the same time, it taught me something. Like, that is truly my conviction, right? Like you need health. You can't deny that health is the most important priority in your life. I get it. You're going to say your spouse's health is more important than you. It's not, because it isn't. Who has the oxygen first in the airplane? You, not your kids, not your wife, because if you're not well, the burden's on everybody else. Now, once I've established that health in anybody, I don't care. I can break down any barrier when I take through the sequence. It's simple, right? Everybody needs health to actually live out their God-given potential, purpose, or whatever they have and believe in their mind. So now all I got to do is connect the dots between the spine's role in their health, and then how the spine goes through, again, the stresses of life, and we deal with that called subluxation and connect the brain to body. So again, we sometimes make it so hard, but that's what we have, man. That's what we have, because we have the keys to health, and then you talk about the above, down, inside out philosophy. Now it's game over. Now you have a lens that allows you to see things like you have never saw them before. Wow, a fever is good for me. Wow, there's something like, wow, that headache may actually serve me, tell me something's wrong, not just a lack of Tylenol. Wow, I've never thought of it that way. So I need to get to the cause. See, this is where, it gets endless.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I'm just going to kind of pattern interrupt a little bit, because before we got on here, just to be transparent, Dan goes, well, how long are we going to talk? Whenever, we'll get in a conversation, a seminar, because you speak at all our seminars. By the way, I wanted to talk about October 19, 20 in Chicago. Everybody, we're having an annual seminar. We've got a lineup of people that is friggin' amazing. Chris Zano, Dan, we'd love to have you if you can make it. Dan Pompa, Billy DeMoss. Now we have Ben Greenfield's going to be there.
Oh, nice.
Hayes is probably got to talk to Jeff Hayes and confirm him. God, the list goes on and on and on. But anyway, we're saying, and I tell them every time we get talking, man, we could say 45 minutes, but it's gonna be an hour and a half. So we're already at 58 minutes here ish. So, and that flew by fast. But you know what? Basically, I think one of the underlying themes of this whole thing is, when you have the principle, you have the stamina and courage. The principle gives you courage, because, hey, I had diarrhea my first time. Second workshop, I didn't have diarrhea. I thought it was a major win. You know what I mean? But then now look what we do. So when you have the principle and you realize it's a life purpose, you go gain the skill, not because we want to be skillful, but because our patients deserve it and the profession deserves it. So we do it for other people. So I'd like you to ask that question. Are your patients using chiropractic, or they believe in chiropractic? If you want to learn how to believe it, certainly send me your email, because we're going to give out a bunch of free stuff that's showing you how to do that. Dan, you're such a great influencer, because your science does help people intellectually. I mean, I'd go to CBP. Man, when you get that science, it's like, okay, it's concrete. So do you need the science too? Yeah, I think you do.
Yeah.
So, follow Dan.
And for me, and again, for a lot of us, we're all wired a little bit differently, right? For me, every time I hear science, like I forgot how big this is, and I'm like willing to run through a brick wall, right? Same thing when you hear the depth of that philosophy that makes you, read Life Without Fear again by Fred Barge. I open that every year at least once. One Cause, One Cure. Those are my two most favorite books. And you just read that and you just forget, like, wow, yes, it's that simple and it's that profound. Literally, what can change the big idea, right? It's the biggest idea I know, and it could save millions. And let me just, and I'll kind of, as we start wrapping up here, let me tell you something. I put this out today, just a quick line on social media. There's never been a better time to be a chiropractor. And I had a bunch of people, I think there's like 250 people that liked it, which is kind of a little bit in today's Facebook world and algorithms, that's, for them to even see it. What it tells me is I get hope around that. I'm like, people, there wasn't any negative. Nobody's like, well, no, nobody said that. There was all the comments. That gives me hope. And again, what I want, and I just said it, and I'm gonna spend the next couple of weeks on emails and other things backing it up. And I've been saying it, and I'll say it every time I speak. It's my thing. There's never been a better time. And I'm going to say it next week, and I'm going to say it 6 months from now, because in 6 months from now, it will be better than now. And in a year from now, somebody's like, well, prove it to me, and that's a good model. Here's the thing. If you see what some of the experts are saying when it comes to the nervous system, if you look at what some of the research is coming out, have nothing to do with, right, quote unquote, nothing to do with chiropractic, but it has everything to do with chiropractic. They have no idea what they're saying, and the fact that we've been talking about things like this, and we actually can affect it. They know it's affecting life and health and conditions and physiology. We are the ones that directly can influence it without drugs, without surgeries. I went to 2 weeks ago on a Monday, I went to Deepak Chopra, and I had a buddy invite me. I'm glad I went last minute. And the only reason I went, I kind of remember listening to him when I was in chiropractic school, but I went, the title of the talk was not weight loss or supplements or here's how to kind of whatever, some sort of gimmick or whatever that, sells right now. The title was self-healing. And I literally showed up there, and it was this big theater. And I thought, I thought there would be a bunch of yoga people and maybe, some chiros and some other kind of, alternative hippie looking people. It was completely packed. Thousands of people showed up for a topic called self-healing. If we as a profession don't recognize that people are looking, and when I say people, the public, your community, people in your community are looking for doctors and offices and professionals that will literally walk them through and at least open their eyes, give them an opportunity, and hold their hand and show them that there's more to health than pills, potions, lotion, surgery. That blew my mind. I literally have pictures that they thought it was weird because I kept taking a picture. When I got there, the door out the line was a block and a half down the line. I got pictures of it. I show it now. For self-healing. For a guy, he spoke for 82 minutes on self-healing, and you know what he talked about. He talked about everything we talk about, right? In a sense, in DNA and epigenetics, and it's not just about, he won't even call it your body. He calls it your body-mind because he goes, it's metaphysical, right? He understands there's more to the story than just your physical part. What profession best represents that, and more importantly, what people are actually interested in and looking for today that I argue weren't even looking for it 20 years ago. Yeah. So we have something, and again, I believe, this is why the principal chiropractor has something so unique and special, and it's like the Coast Guard. I heard this Coast Guard, this model that they do. When they jump out to save somebody, I got asked the question, who do they save first? When they jump in and, people are drowning, who do they save first? My first inkling and answer was the young, the kids, the elderly, the moms, the women. And the answer was no. The answer was those swimming towards them. That's who they save first. That's who they've got a shot with. And it just, for me, I use that as there's so many people in your community, Doc, that's listening to this right now that are swimming towards you. They just have no idea you're the one they want to swim towards. They have no idea that what you have is what they're actually wanting. They want it. They just don't know that you have the delivery
of the title of that talk was not back pain, by the way.
Yeah, there was nothing about back pain.
Yeah, exactly. So for everybody that's hooked on it, you got thousands of people showing up for self-healing, man. Let's talk about the principle.
And by the way, the lowest ticket was $48. So this is essentially like a concert. I mean, people, instead of going to watch whatever concert, they were coming to watch an 82-minute. There wasn't an opening act. It was 82 minutes of Deepak Chopra talking about, and he talked about the 6. He went over 6 things that will change your life. Movement and yoga was one of them. Movement, you would lump in there spinal movement and its influence on neurology. He didn't necessarily say that directly, but I'm just telling you that, and he's like, the data's done, the research is done, here, go here if you want to see any of the research I talk about. So that's what we have to know as a profession. Man, not only do we have seen the amazing results for 123 years, we have the evidence to back it up. And don't for a second think you can't walk into any room with anyone. I don't care if it's the greatest researcher, the Surgeon General, the President of the United States, I don't care who it is, that you have the evidence to back up why you do what you do, why you get the results you get, and why everybody needs your care.
Well, how do they get a hold of you and look at the stuff you have? You have amazing stuff. How do they get connected with you? So
my website is chiropracticadvocate.com. And my email is on there, and there it's dsullivandc@gmail, dsullivandc@gmail.com, or find me. Probably the easiest way to find me is on Facebook. Just Dan Sullivan DC, and you can find me and there, message me or whatever you need. Anything I said that you want, or the research I went over, or anything like that. We didn't even get into the opioid thing. I mean, that's a whole nother ballgame. Sure, that's a pain, but I'm telling you right now, it's another whole crazy thing that provides an opportunity for us to bridge the gap.
Hey, buddy, we lost you. Are you there? Are you back?
I'm there. You hear me?
Okay, yeah, there's a big cutoff. Well, that's probably our sign anyway. So And anybody wants to get in our webinars system, then go to elitecoachingllc.com. You can also fill out a Start the Process survey. If you want us to talk to you, you can email me directly, drfred1@msn.com for any info about the boot camps. You can find me on Facebook, Dr. Fred Didomenico. Yeah, you'll figure it out. It's a few syllables. Anyway, thanks so much for being here, man. It's always as inspirational as always, and always great hanging with you in all aspects of that.
My pleasure. My pleasure, buddy, and appreciate all you do for chiropractic, for humanity, and just what you stand for and represent. So,
likewise. Okay, everybody. Hey, we got some great other speakers coming up. Stay connected to Chiro United Podcast, and look for us on Facebook, and get on our email list, and we'll blast out all kinds of things, including this podcast. So take care. Peace to y'all.